The whole country is dialing back DEI initiatives, but the Harvard Crimson recently announced that Harvard University is choosing to double down on their DEI programming. We need to talk about this. On President Donald Trump's first day in office, he signed a slew of executive orders, and one of the orders involved ordering all federal agencies to terminate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and including DEI officers' positions, chief diversity officer positions, and whatever that entailed.
We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all across the entire federal government and indeed the private sector and our military.
Now, I want to preface this commentary by saying this, because undoubtedly there will be individuals out there who will either call me a bleeding conservative or and the like. Now, hear me out. I came to this country with literally 2 suitcases. All I had was 2 suitcases, acceptance into a master's degree program, and an unrelenting work ethic with the understanding that the United States allowed for upward social mobility by means of the application of merit. And so I would be judged not by the color of my skin, but on the basis of my character and the value that I brought to the table. Thankfully, my life right now and what I do is proof positive of this. DEI initiatives throughout the world demonstrably harms nations more than they help them. In fact, more than anything, DEI initiatives actually bring about the downfall and crumbling of a society, because all that winds up happening is reverse racism gets installed into the societal sphere, into institutional spheres, and into governmental spheres as a result of DEI initiatives, things like affirmative action initiatives. And I'll prove this to you. Nafis Alam, he wrote this in the DC Journal fairly recently. By eroding the perception of competence, DEI has inadvertently stigmatized minorities. I belong to this. Perpetuated stereotypes, polarized societies. So today it's firefighters, tomorrow it may be pilots, doctors, lawyers. The consequences of prioritizing demographics over qualifications are becoming impossible to ignore. Thomas Sowell, the American economist, he's really a brilliant read, and I greatly encourage that you pick up a lot of his work. But he comments from an economic perspective in his work Dismantling America and Other Controversial Essays. And he writes this: can you cite one speck of hard evidence of the benefits of quote-unquote diversity that we have heard gushed about for years? Evidence of its harm can be seen throughout history, written in blood. Iraq to India, Serbia to Sudan, Fiji to the Philippines. It is scary how easily so many people can be brainwashed by sheer repetition of a word. The narrative out there is that racial diversity, demographic diversity, becomes a strength in a nation. That's not actually true. Excellence of virtue, character, and performance is what becomes the strength of a nation. This is factual. It's not just true on a material level, it's also true on the deeper level of the founding of a nation, in this case, the United States of America, and the founding of a virtuous nation that has Judeo-Christian principles as its ideals, and therefore a meritocracy ought to be in place, because that's what virtues call for. John McWhorter, he's a linguist and cultural commentator. Now, he can be a little neutral about this, and he has posited actually numerous times certain forms of anti-racism have evolved into a quasi-religious movement. And I can attest to this. In minority communities, I'm constantly being fed an almost religious idiom that I have to be against majority races, especially Caucasians. And so these quasi-religious movements that may be as harmful as the racism they aim to combat. And so his criticism shows that aspects of DEI initiatives, in his view, have infantilized minority, including black individuals, and has created a culture of victimhood rather than empowerment. And this is why I've always stood against initiatives that are demographics-based, even if they claim to support people like me. I want to make this very clear. If I have gained any form of employment, any form of privilege as a result of the color of my race, I don't want it. Because all it does is it tells me that on the basis of my mediocrity, I can receive benefits. Not only will that be bad for me, it will be bad for people like me. And so my entire culture, my entire race, my entire creed, my entire religion, my entire society, all of these things will perpetuate mediocre stereotypes. Corporations have seen how this has hit their bottom line. And so what have they done? They've dialed back their DEI initiatives. Target, McDonald's, John Deere, Ford Motor Company, Victoria's Secret, all of them have dialed back DEI initiatives, and the list just keeps increasing. We are a virtuous nation, a nation founded upon a virtuous constitution. Benjamin Franklin once said, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have need of masters. We've made DEI a master. We need to be a democracy. The Catholic response, St. Thomas Aquinas, Summa Theologiae, Secunda Pars. He writes this: justice is a habit whereby a man renders to each one his due with constant and perpetual will. And we are owed what we are due based on the content of our character and our merit. Human dignity demands certain rights by virtue of God, and our character makes it so that the building of the kingdom of God here on earth is a kind of meritocracy, given as a grace of God for us to participate and cooperate in, to build and flourish society. The church on earth must reflect that. We're not made for initiatives to support us simply because of our demographics. We are made to be virtuous and therefore to be excellent. You want to see this nation thrive? Be excellent in all things. And then we will start seeing a flourishing like never before. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marcus Peter.